In this video, we're going to learn how to use functions to create interesting patterns using the turtle module. Let's get on with it. So let's start with the basics. Now, in order to draw with the turtle using Python, we first need to import the turtle module. Now, don't worry if that sounds complicated. All you really need to know is that the first line of your program looks like this. From turtle import star, which means import everything from the turtle module. That now allows us to use commands like forward. If I run that, you can see that our little triangle has moved forward 200 pixels. Now you might have been expecting to see a turtle move across the screen, given that this is called the turtle module. And in fact, if you wanted to, you could set it to be a turtle. So you could put shape, and then in the brackets, the string turtle. And now we do actually get the little turtle moving around the screen. There is a reason why it's a turtle. It's because it links back to an old programming language called Logo, which used a turtle. Logo was a language that was introduced many years ago as a way to teach children how to program. So Python kind of borrowed it from there. So I'm going to delete that. I'm quite happy with the triangle. I just thought you'd like to know why it was called turtle. So now we have a program that moves forward 200. Let's say that I want it to draw a square. So let's carry on. I now want it to turn right by 90 degrees, forward, right. What I now need to do is repeat these two lines of code so that it moves forward, right, forward, right, forward, right, forward, right. And now it draws a square. But we can shorten this code to make things a little bit easier. So instead of typing the full word forward, we can actually just put the first and last letters, FD. That means exactly the same thing. And for right, we can put RT. And again, I could take those two lines of code, 2, 3, 4. So that does exactly the same thing, but we've had to type a little bit less code. But you might notice that we are still having to repeat these two lines of code 4 times. That's quite inefficient. Wouldn't it be better if we could tell our program to simply repeat those two lines of code 4 times? And in fact, we can. So let me delete all of that. What we can do is use something called a for loop. So if I type for I in range and then open some brackets. Now don't worry about what the I bit means for the moment. All you really need to know is that the number you put in the brackets here is the number of repeats. So I'm going to put 4. Now at the end of the for loop, you need to put a colon. This is very important. Not a semicolon, you hold the shift key down, a colon. And when you now hit return, you'll see that the cursor is now indented. So instead of being there, it's there. That means that I'm inside the for loop. Anything that I type now will be repeated 4 times. So let's go ahead and do our forward 200 and right 90. And now when I run it, we get exactly the same output. It draws a square, but we've done it using 3 lines of code instead of 8. We've made our program more efficient. Now at this stage, I'd like to talk about a common error that I see from students. So let's say that you've typed your for loop up to this point and you forget to do the colon. You go ahead and hit return. Note that we are not indented. I'm going to go ahead and put my forward 200 and my right 90. And when I try and run this, nothing happens. If I had the output console visible at the moment, we'd be able to read the error that this has created. There are 2 ways that you can fix this. One would be simply to delete those lines of code, drop the colon in, hit return, and now we are indented. Alternatively, we could fix this by heading back up here, putting the colon in, and then highlighting these 2 lines of code which should be indented, and hitting the tab key, that's the one above caps lock, to indent them. And now it works again. So if you find that your for loop doesn't work, check to make sure that you've got the colon on the end of the for loop and that the code inside the for loop is properly indented. Now that we've made that for loop, we can play around with this for loop to create different shapes. So maybe instead of repeating 4 times to draw a square, maybe I repeat it 3 times to draw a triangle. And I'm going to change the angle to 120 degrees. 90 degrees was the angle that was required to draw a square. Let's run this and we can see that it now draws a triangle. Well, now let's talk about functions. What I'm now going to do is go above that code, and I'm going to type def, which is the keyword for define, then the name of the function that I want to create, triangle, followed by a set of brackets. And then just like a for loop, I need to put a colon. Now I could hit return and start typing out for I in range blah blah blah, but I've already got that code. So what I'm going to do is simply highlight that for loop, all 3 lines, and tab it in. That for loop is now part of my triangle function. But if I run my code right now, nothing happens. Because all I've actually done is teach the program how to draw a triangle. My program now knows what triangle means, but I haven't actually told the program to go ahead and do it, to draw that triangle. It just knows how to do it. So what we need to do after that function is actually run the function, or call the function, which is the proper word. So let me go ahead and type triangle, bracket, bracket. That's me calling the function, telling it to actually go ahead and do it. And now it draws a triangle. Let's take that triangle function. I'm going to paste it in again, and this time I'm going to change this one to square. And let's put that back to repeat 4 times, and the angle 90 degrees. So now my program knows how to draw a triangle and a square. Let's go ahead and make it draw a triangle, followed by a square. Draws a triangle, and then from exactly the same point, it draws a square. Well, now that we've got those functions defined, we can have a bit of fun here. So let's experiment by creating another for loop for I in range, and this time I'm going to put 10, so it's going to repeat 10 times. And what I'd like it to do is to first of all draw a triangle, then I'd like it to turn right a little bit, and I'm going to put 36 degrees. That's a tenth of a circle. And now when I run this, you'll see that it draws one triangle, rotates a tenth of a circle, draws another triangle. Now it's going very slow here, so this would be a good opportunity to actually head up the top here and change the speed of the program. Let's put speed 10. I'm going to rerun it and we'll see now it goes nice and fast. So I've created a really interesting pattern simply by repeating the shapes. Well, let's try changing that from triangle to square. And now it repeats exactly the same thing. It draws 10 squares, making a different pattern. Now, if you want your turtle to go even faster, you can actually set it to speed 0. And now it goes lightning fast. So I'm going to leave it on speed 0 for the moment. Now let's say that you want to make your pattern a bit more interesting. There's some other things we can do. So I could change the width of the line. So let's put 5. And now you can see we've got a thicker line on our pattern. I can also change the color. Notice it's the American spelling of color, so no U in there. And inside the brackets, you must make sure that you type your color in quotes, so it's a string. I'm going to put red. And there we go. But we can go one better than this. I'm going to delete all of this so that all we're left with is the function that draws the triangle. Now let's say that I don't want it to always draw a triangle where the sides are 200 pixels long. It would be nice if I could call my triangle and at this point tell it how long the sides should be. Well, in order to do that, what I need to do up here where I define my function, I need to tell it that I'm going to be giving it a length. And then inside the function, instead of that being 200, it's going to be whatever that length is. So now when I run this function, I'm typing in 300, which ends up going into the function here and into the forward command here. So now it draws a triangle with sides of 300. Let's change it to 100 and run it again. So now our function is a lot more versatile. There's actually a proper name for this value that I've put inside the brackets when I defined the function. It's called a parameter. And the value that you type in when you call the function is known as an argument. Let's go one better and put in a second parameter. Maybe instead of this being a triangle, perhaps this draws a polygon, a shape with any number of sides. So squares, triangles, pentagons, octagons, decagons, all polygons. And what I want to be able to do is type in the number of sides of the shape followed by how long those sides need to be. And inside the function, the number of sides is actually going to be what goes into there. So if I run it with 4, 100, I'm expecting it to draw squares with sides of 100. If I was to run it with 8 and 100, it should draw octagons with sides of 100. But there's one more important thing I need to do. This angle here has to be correct depending on the number of sides of the shape. So for a triangle, it was a third of 360 degrees. Remember, whatever shape you draw, the turtle will always end up back where it started, so it always turns through a full 360 degrees. What we're interested in is whether it turns 3 times for a triangle, or 4 times for a square, 6 times, 7 times, 8 times. So in fact, the number of sides can go there. And this way, the function can simply calculate the angle based on the number of sides of the shape. So let's try this out. I'm going to call polygon, and I want it to draw a polygon with 8 sides, so that's an octagon, where each side is 50 pixels long. There we go. Let's try changing it to something else. Let's go for a pentagon, where the sides are 200 long. So you can see that by using parameters within a function, we can actually make it much more versatile, much more useful. Instead of it doing just one job, that function can now be used to draw lots of different shapes. So now let's put all of that together. Let's create a for loop. And again, we'll go for 10 repeats. And what I'd like it to do is to draw a polygon, and we'll just go for squares to start with. And then I'd like it to turn through a tenth of a circle. And in fact, in here, I could use that same trick and say 360 divided by the number of shapes that I want. So now we can see it draws a pattern using squares. Well, now that we've got a for loop that can draw a pattern, why don't we define another function to draw a pattern? We're going to teach our program how to draw patterns. So I'm going to define another function. This one's going to be called pattern, bracket, bracket, colon. I need all of this indented, so highlight all of it and hit that tab key. Now, of course, I need to call that pattern function, otherwise the program won't do anything. So now I've created a function that draws a pattern. Why don't we go ahead and put a parameter into the pattern function? So let's say that when I call the pattern, I want to be able to tell it how many shapes to draw. So I expect it to draw a pattern with 5 shapes in it. Well, I can go up here. Inside the function definition, inside those brackets, let's put a parameter in here, and I'm going to call it shapes. That parameter then needs to go inside the range, and it also needs to go here so that it calculates the correct angle. Let's run it now. It draws 5 shapes. Let's change it to 15. Now it draws 15 shapes. And now let's make things really interesting. Let's also specify sides and length when we call the pattern. So sides and length, remember, are what go into the polygon function. So the sides value needs to go there, and the length value needs to go there. And now when I call pattern, I have to tell it how many shapes I want, how many sides are on those shapes, so let's go for pentagons, and how long I want each of those sides to be, so let's go for 100. I now have a function that is very versatile. Let's try changing this. Let's also go ahead and change the color just to keep things interesting. So now I want it to draw 20 shapes. I want those shapes to be octagons, and I want each of those octagons to have sides of, let's go for 75. So hopefully now you understand a little bit more about how to work with functions and the Turtle module.